yours truly, Brevin Thompson, is back to continue 80s May with Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, which was once again directed by Steven Spielberg and produced by George Lucas. And this film is actually a prequel to Raiders of the Lost Ark, taking place 1 year before the events of Raiders. This is definitely one of the few oddballs in the franchise, because when this was released, I mean, despite this being rated PG, this film is so dark and so violent and so fucked up that it essentially helped create the PG-13 rating. A lot of people saw this back then along with Gremlins in '84, and they thought that PG is kind of a bit too much, especially in this, when it comes to this film, when you have like one scene where Balaram like rips a dude's heart out from his chest. That's enough to give a kid some nightmares for a while, so yeah. They thought that PG was a bit too much, and so we got the PG-13 rating thanks to this film and Gremlins. So because of that, it makes Temple of Doom a bit of a historical film in some degree. But before I go farther into the review, I have my good friend Ryan Cam collaborate with me on Temple of Doom. We previously collaborated on Raiders, and since we're continuing on with the original trilogy, of course, he's about to talk about Temple of Doom. So before I discuss my thoughts on the film, it's your go, Ryan.
Hello everyone, my name is Ryan Cam, and I want to thank Brevin for having me back on his channel, this time to talk about another Indiana Jones movie, Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. I'm going to be completely honest in saying that I've had a bit of a on-again, off-again relationship with this movie. On the one hand, there have been some years where I just straight up did not like this movie. However, there have been some years where I've actually really enjoyed this movie. In the year 2022, I can safely say that I am in the middle on this one. There's definitely stuff that I do not like. However, there is a lot of stuff that I actually admire. This is actually the first movie, if my memory serves me correct, to be rated PG-13. At the time, I believe the rationale was this movie is too violent to be PG, however not too violent to be R. And so PG-13 was created, and we still have it to this very day. This movie's also pretty notable because I think that after this point, Steven Spielberg became more of a whimsical filmmaker. Not to say that he wasn't whimsical before, but going forward after this, it was like a darker side of him just left the building and never returned. This isn't to say that Spielberg slowed down. Oh, no way. I mean, the year 1993, just that alone says that Steven Spielberg was always Steven Spielberg. However, Temple of Doom represented the end of an era that began with Jaws and ended with Temple of Doom. It's like the dark Spielberg, for lack of a better term. Harrison Ford is, of course, perfect as Indiana Jones. He has a couple great lines here, one in which where he and Short Round are about to be crushed and Willie Scott has to find that lever to stop the rock, and where Indy goes, "We are going to die!" I love that delivery. And then in the penultimate, or the climax, I should say, where Indy's running across that bridge and the goons are after him, and he has the machete, and he's like, "Prepare to meet Kali in hell," and he whacks away at the bridge and they all fall down. It's great stuff. Huy Quan has gotten a bit of a career renaissance as he was in Everything Everywhere All at Once. However, he was Short Round originally, and I've never been a Short Round hater. I think personally I've liked him because he was at the very least useful. There's another character, Willie Scott, where she just yelled and screamed, but was almost borderline useless. Short Round, A, could drive, and B, stopped the Voodoo Kid when the Voodoo Kid was attacking Indy with the Voodoo Doll while Indy was fighting off the big Indian goon. So Short Round could more than pull his weight. I guess this is as good a place as any to talk about Kate Capshaw, because I am not a big Willie Scott fan. I think that she's very annoying personally. Give me Marion Ravenwood or Elsa Schneider every day of the week and twice on Sunday. This is definitely near the knuckle, even for Indiana Jones. Like, a dude's heart gets pulled out of his chest in this movie. I mean, that's the mid-80s for you. There are certain darker elements of this that I do appreciate. However, there are others where it just kind of took me out of it just to be like, how were they able to get away with this, even in 1984? But at the end of the day, I do have a lot of respect for this movie. It is not perfect. However, what I do like about it, I really like about it. But I'm so excited that the next time I'll be on Brevin's channel, I'll be talking about my favorite Indiana Jones movie, Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. But for right now, back to you, Brevin.
So I like the opening dance scene at the club Huy Quan. I mean, I think that's really well executed. And it's completely different compared to the opening of Raiders. And of course we see Indiana Jones again, played by Harrison Ford. And I think for the most part he's still great as this character, and I can't imagine anybody else playing this character as well as he does, because Harrison Ford is awesome as Indiana Jones. And how this scene plays out with Indy wanting a diamond in exchange for these ancient remains that these guys are after, they poison Indy's drink and it leads to an action sequence, and he's trying to get the antidote, and we see Willie Scott, who's played by Kate Capshaw, trying to get the diamond. And of course, I mean, during this we get the introduction of Short Round, and for some reason, Short Round for most people is annoying. I never once found him annoying, and since I was a kid, I have always loved this character because he supports Indy and actually helps him throughout the entire film, while Willie she's basically useless throughout most of the film. So out of all the supporting characters in Temple of Doom, Short Round is easily the best. The following scene is easily one of the most debatable scenes in the entire franchise. When you had, like, the pilots who are in league with the bad guys, like, emptying out the fuel of the plane, and then they jump out of the plane, and Indy is, like, trying to figure out, I mean, since he can't fly the plane, they have to, like, get a raft, they inflate the raft, slide down the mountain, and then they go, like, I mean, they land in a river, and I get it. It's entirely implausible for them to survive something like that, but I wouldn't go so far as to say it's like completely stupid, like nuking the fridge in Indiana Jones 4, because I mean, when you watch like the nuke the fridge moment in Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, I mean, you're like, yeah, Indy should be fucking dead. And I'm like, I go back and forth on this, but I mean, it's a decent looking scene, but it's like, yeah, I mean, when they land on a mountain, on a raft, they be fucking dead. So Indy, Shorty, and Willie come across this village in India that has been attacked by the Thuggee. They also discover that their Sharkar stone has been stolen by the Thuggee, who want to use it for their own evil purposes. Plus, they've taken the village's children, and the village's leader asks Indy to go to Bangkok Palace to retrieve the stone and save their children. And once they get to Bangkok Palace, when it comes to the dinner scene, it's pretty messed up. And I remember this being the first film that I watched in the franchise, because I watched this with my grandfather, and I remember at 10 years old, this scene really disturbed me. This, along with the human sacrifice scene later in the film. What they served in this scene, you have snakes, bugs, soup with eyeballs, and monkey brains, and that is kind of fucked up. So we get a brief action scene where Indy fights off an assassin who tries to kill him, and he finds a secret passageway that leads to the Temple of Doom. And I like that this film's creepy crawly as bugs, since Raiders had snakes. Spielberg decided to go with bugs for this film, and there's this pit that's full with every single terrifying bug that you can think of. And I like when Shorty like activates this mechanism that like sends like this ceiling filled with spikes like slowly coming down upon him and Indy, and they had to have Willie come in there to save them and try to find the switch to get them out of this terrible scenario. And it's very suspenseful and hilarious at the same time.
There are 2 dead people down here!
There are gonna be 2 dead people in here! Hurry!
The next scene is easily the most talked about scene in the entire film, and that's of course when Molaram sticks his hand into this guy's chest, rips out his fucking heart while it's still beating, and if that's not enough, he dips this guy into a pit of fire, and when the guy is set on fire, he's holding the heart still, and it's set on fire, and he's just laughing his ass off. And I'm just like, that is really fucked up. And I remember the first time I saw that, it really disturbed me. I was like, oh my god. And like I said, it's really fucked up. And if that's not enough, Spielberg has child slavery in this film. The Thuggee have used these village children to try to mine for more of the Sharkar stones. And when the Thuggee capture Indy, Shorty, and Willie, they have Indy tortured in one scene where they use a voodoo doll to torture him, and they force him to drink this potion that turns him evil. And I'm just like, good god, there is just so much dark shit in this film. So they try to sacrifice Willie, and Indy is still under the influence of this drug that they use to brainwash him, basically. Shorty manages to get out of his captivity, and they manages to use a torch to try to snap Indy out of this spell. And we get an action scene where they save Willie, and this of course leads to them getting the stones, saving the kids. And of course, he has to fight some big dude in this film. In Raiders, he fought the Nazi mechanic, who was played by Pat Roach. And he fights the big Thuggee dude, who is also played by Pat Roach in this film. And Indy, in this scene, while he's fighting this guy, there's this kid with this voodoo doll, and he's fucking around with Indy with the voodoo doll. So Shorty has to stop that kid and get that voodoo doll out of his hands so Indy can continue to kick this Thuggee guy's ass. And they're fighting on a conveyor belt, and it's really amazing. And John Williams' score in this scene is so riveting. I love John Williams' score in this film as well, and it's easily one of my favorites in the entire Indiana Jones franchise. And the minecart chase is pretty entertaining. But there's some moments where it can be a little bit dated, especially in one shot where you see one of the Thuggee grab Shorty's arms, and they're weirdly stretched out, and it looks like a terrible effect. It's almost like he had Go-Go Gadget arms, basically. And the bridge scene, good god. And I love the line that Shorty says right when Indy's about to cut the rope.
You know nuts. He's crazy.
And of course, Indy uses a sword to snap the bridge in half, and he fights Molaram on the other half of the bridge. And I love everything about this when he uses the power of the stones against Molaram. I mean, 2 fall out of his bag, and he manages to catch only one of them for the village. And how everything plays out at the end with Indy returning the stone to the village, and the children are reunited with their parents, and Indy and Willie can kiss, and it's a pretty happy ending for a really messed up, disturbing film. So yeah, when it comes to Temple of Doom, it's definitely one of the oddballs of the franchise. I wouldn't go so far as to say that this is bad. I mean, this is entertaining. I've always grown to appreciate this film. Even when I was a kid, I mean, this was the first film in the franchise that I remember watching. I mean, in terms of in the order of the franchise that I watched, the first film in the franchise that I watched was, in theaters, otherwise it was Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. But in terms of the original trilogy, Temple of Doom was the one I watched first. And then it was Last Crusade, and then it was Raiders. So definitely an odd order to watch the franchise. But when it comes to Temple of Doom, there was just so much to love. The performances are great. The action sequences are awesome. I like how dark it is, and I like how different it is compared to Raiders. But there are like some moments where it can go like a little bit too far in terms of its violence, and some effects look a little bit dated, and especially where you see like some weird optical effects, and it kind of like dates the movie. But still, Temple of Doom is fucking awesome, and I'm gonna give it an A-. Ryan, thank you so much for collaborating with me on Temple of Doom, and I can't wait to talk about Last Crusade pretty soon. So guys, what did you think of Temple of Doom? Let me know in the comments below. Thank you so much as always for watching. Looking forward to doing more videos really soon. And if you want my thoughts on old or new films, of course, you know where to find me.